So whatever happened to? I get that question a lot, weeks or even months after we do an investigation. This week's mid-year update has answers to a handful of our stories, beginning with a controversial visitor center on the Richmond-Exeter line that is now on hold.
Take it around the corner, put it on the corner, make it 4 levels so you can see the sunset. I don't care, but it doesn't belong on the pond.
The people who use Brownie Mill Pond in Exeter didn't hold back when representatives from the Department of Environmental Management held a meeting in March. They were there to explain and defend a $7.2 million visitors and natural resources center that many felt was inappropriate for the location, so close to the pond and poorly advertised by state officials. Work on the center, which was supposed to begin already, has been delayed because of several setbacks. They include a lawsuit filed by the local towns insisting that the state has to get clearance from planning and zoning boards for the project, which it didn't do. More problematic, though, is a sudden lack of funding. The General Assembly last week pulled back millions of dollars budgeted for the project this year, the first year of construction. DEM is also conducting traffic and archaeological studies, but a spokeswoman declined to tell the Hummel report if or when the project was going forward. That's good news for the opponents who have rallied against the proposed center. Last summer's popular Providence-to-Newport ferry is back with a longer season this year, but it got off to a bumpy start literally right after it launched earlier this month. More than 33,000 people took advantage of the taxpayer-subsidized service last summer, which featured a $10 one-way adult ticket from India Point Park in Providence to downtown Newport. The lower prices are made possible by a $500,000 federal grant aimed at relieving traffic congestion. DOT Director Peter Alviti told us last fall he'd like to see the service expanded, and this year the state followed through. The service began in mid-June and will run through October 1st, 41 days longer than last year. And it will be adding an additional round trip each day of the week. The longer season means more than $800,000 in federal money to cover the extra days. But a day after launching in June, the ferry collided with a buoy in the Providence River, trying to avoid a sudden change in direction of another boat near it. And that forced the suspension of the service for 10 days. The ferry did begin running again on Tuesday. Alviti says the company that operates the ferry will absorb costs associated with the lost operating days. The Wickford Junction Train Station continues to be a money pit for the state, but the DOT is launching a new promotion next week that it hopes will attract some new riders. Wickford Junction has never lived up to the state's ridership projections and is costing taxpayers millions of dollars in maintenance and lost revenue. The DOT, which charged $4 a day for parking when the $44 million complex opened in 2012, abandoned that fee years ago. Even still, only a couple of hundred people use the 1,100-car White Elephant garage adjacent to the MBTA commuter train stop on any given day. Beginning next week, the state will begin offering free fares for rail riders traveling to Warwick or Providence. Quote, "The promotion will raise awareness of this convenient transit service, encouraging more people to use the train instead of the busy Route 4 highway corridor and the subsequent challenges of driving into and parking in Providence," a department release reads. The free fares promotion runs from July 3rd until the end of the year. The contractor that installed defective guardrails on the iWay bridge in Providence has agreed to pay back $500,000, but still insists the state is partially at fault. For years, Jersey barriers covered the defective guardrails on the Route 195 relocation project's signature bridge, while the DOT and Carty Corporation, which installed them nearly a decade ago, wrangled over who was responsible. Carty is agreeing to pay $500,000 to settle claims with the federal government, which paid for the vast majority of the iWay project, according to the Providence Journal. The company still points the finger at the state DOT, saying that its inspectors signed off on the guardrail installation, and it is not ruling out making a legal claim against the state. Carty finally finished installation of the replacement guardrails earlier this year. State officials have now acknowledged what we first reported in April. Narragansett Bay hasn't been this clean in more than a century and a half. And that's great news for Rhode Island shell fishermen. Our report this past spring was one of a series of stories we've done about the Narragansett Bay Commission's efforts to clean up the bay and the Providence River over the past decade. But it comes at a steep price for the Commission's 80,000 customers, who have seen their rates more than triple to foot the bill for a massive overflow pipe project that contains sewage during heavy rains. And while the agency debates how much more it needs to do on another phase, the Department of Environmental Management in May reopened large portions of Upper Narragansett Bay to shell fishing, some of which had not been open for more than 70 years. A total of more than 3,700 acres has been reopened, officially acknowledging what scientists and users of Rhode Island's waters have known for years. The bay is in significantly better shape than it was even 5 years ago. And finally, we reported earlier this month several areas that the General Assembly might consider trimming from its own budget. Just last week, the House released a spending plan that is $2 million less than it originally requested.
We're going to start cutting out a lot of FTEs that are not currently filled.
We raised the issue with House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello during an interview earlier this month. The General Assembly has 44 budgeted but unfilled full-time positions, or FTEs, in its budget request for next year. Facing a huge budget deficit, the House did in fact look in the mirror when it was searching for cuts. It will reduce its own proposed spending by $2 million next year. That still leaves it with more than $40 million to run a part-time legislature that has dozens of people receiving full-time benefits for only working 20 hours a week. A spokesman tells us it is still unclear what specifically will be cut from next year's General Assembly budget. We are already gearing up for the second half of 2017, and we want you to be part of it. Send us your tips or story ideas to me directly at jim@hummelreport.org.